I've got my man Harvey Bennett with us. I haven't got my baseball cap on though. I can't turn it around back to front, inside out. So
do you even own a cap?
I do own a baseball cap.
How old is it?
I look really silly in it though, because my ears stick out like that. Anyway, welcome to the show. Good evening, everybody. It's Facebook Live, it's Instagram Live, and believe it or not, we've got LinkedIn Live here tonight with Harvey too. So we're talking about all things recruitment tonight, because over the course of the last, the last probably 12 months, I've been really seeing some bad recruitment decisions made in businesses. And I always get irrational reasons and unjustifiable excuses or unjustifiable explanations as to why it is. And Harvey's business is a business that's in recruitment but completely different. So I'm going to get him to explain what it is and how it works. And then what we're going to do is we're going to drill Harvey, learn as much as we can from Harvey, and see what we can get from him that can help us make better decisions within our business. So Facebook, you're with us now. Excellent stuff. Greg, nice to see you. Craig, come on in. Come and say hi. Please feel free to ask your questions. Harvey needs love hearts because he's quite a shy guy, aren't you, Harvey? Okay, lots of thumbs up and love hearts. On top of the thumbs up and love hearts, Harvey loves really difficult, complicated questions. And so I'd really like it if you could come to us with those difficult, complicated questions. Try please feel free. Okie dokie. Right, everyone's coming in. Come on in and say hello. As I said, Harvey's here with us. So Harvey, first things first.
Yeah, man.
Your company is called Searchy.
That's correct.
How did it start? Where did it come from? What was the idea behind it?
Look, it started as a recruitment consultancy 5, maybe 6 years ago. My wife was running it, and it was kind of a boutique headhunting firm. It was doing very nicely, and then one day she got bored of me playing golf and Xbox and told me that I had to come in and help her with some of the business process stuff that was happening in the agency. And it didn't take very long from being there to work out that recruitment was a bit of a mess, and there might be a better way of doing it. So within a month, we kind of had this idea of kind of producing psychometric results combined with video and some artificial intelligence thrown in there that then would give employers a nicer way of understanding, like, who is this person? How do they behave? What kind of behaviors can we expect from them in specific kind of scenarios? And how are they going to integrate into our existing team? And then give that information back to employers so as before they even meet someone face to face, they have that kind of visibility on the candidate or the person, and then they can really focus on developing a human-to-human relationship instead of just seeing them as a CV or a profile.
Do you think that by going down that path, it opened your eyes to stuff you hadn't even thought about before?
Man. Yeah.
And what were the big things, the big kind of like moments you had going, holy macaroni, why hadn't we even thought about this?
So, are you familiar with a phenomenon called the Dunning-Kruger effect?
No.
Okay, good. We'll start there.
The Dunning-Kruger effect. Who's familiar with that? The Dunning-Kruger effect. I've never heard of that. Lizzie, have you heard of that?
No.
Never heard. Lizzie, you ever heard of that? No?
Fran.
Have you ever heard of that? You've heard of it?
Searchy team.
Somebody's heard of it. Jolly good. Excellent stuff. Okay.
So the Dunning-Kruger is basically this idea that you've got it's a chart basically, and on the y-axis you have confidence, and then on the x-axis you have ability. And it ends up plotting this really neat shape where when you have very little ability, you're super confident. And then as you get more ability, you realize that actually you don't know what you thought you knew, and so your confidence diminishes until you start to actually get technically good at something, and then your confidence increases again.
Wow.
So you have this peak here, which is called the peak of Mount Stupid. And then you have the plateau of despair, which is this bottom bit, and then there's the period of enlightenment at the end of it, where you start to realize that actually you do know quite a lot about the subject.
And so how did that have an impact in your business?
So that was one of the first things for me. So we got into AI, and there's a lot of press about it, a lot of media, and a lot of Terminator-style movies. And when we first started out, I was a victim of the Dunning-Kruger. I was right at the top of the peak of Mount Stupid, where I just believed I got this. And then as my knowledge began to grow and my ability began to improve, I realized that actually I don't know enough. And now have surrounded myself with people who are infinitely more intelligent than I am. We've got a guy with a PhD in organizational psychology, a girl with a PhD in artificial intelligence. She's also a professor at American University Dubai, and before that, American University Beirut. And then another girl who's a head of data science called May. She's fantastic. In fact, I'm really blessed with the team that we've got. As individuals, they're remarkable. And over the last kind of 6 months since we assembled each other, we've been on this journey to really work out how we can become greater than the sum of our parts as a team. And I've got to say, in the last 2 weeks, these guys have astonished me. They've been incredible.
Okay, so you've been able to put a team together. That, for a load of people, understanding the impact of AI means nothing. All right, so why are computers able, in your opinion, to make better decisions about recruiting the right people for a business than humans?
So, dude, that's a tough question. Are you sure you want to start with?
Keep it simple, okay? Because I'm the person who wants to hear about it.
All right.
Just give me, for everybody else to understand and benefit. We've got a lot of people on here, and I want them to understand why.
All right. So the first thing is scalability. So if you want to do an interview, you can only possibly do it one-to-one. So you are restricted by the bandwidth of you as a human being. You can't. On the flip side to that, I can interview 10,000 people at the same time. I can remove all of the bias that we might have as human beings, because we're very sensitive creatures, right? We have different things that we have experienced that allow us to communicate in certain ways where other people can understand them, and we have different things that we've experienced that allow us to behave or kind of help us and define our behaviors in certain different ways. And similarly, you end up in a situation where our experiences lead us to these biases that we all have. Some of them are more common and obvious than others, like racism and prejudice, and others are more subtle, like confirmation bias, for example. So the beauty of using a machine to create those kind of personality or psychometric reports is that it removes any of those biases. It removes any of the personal scenarios or situations that you find yourself in the day. So if you wake up in a bad mood, or you played rubbish on the golf course, or you had too many drinks the night before, and that will all affect your mood. So when you go and meet that person, you're already suffering from an emotional response to the situation that you found yourself in as well. Machines don't have any emotion. Machines only have the bias that we put into them, which is another conversation that I'm actually having on Thursday with ITP. About bias in artificial intelligence. That's a whole different topic for a very different time. But the machines don't have any of that, those emotional triggers. They don't have any of those biases that we have been programmed with as people. And they are equally effective at identifying things like tone of voice, like body language, like facial expressions, which are all key indicators and signals that we give off to one another when we're speaking and when we're communicating with each other. What is it, like 80% of communication or 70% of communication is body language? Mm-hmm. So if I can use that and feed it into a machine in a way where it can start to understand those same patterns and form those same or similar opinions to a person without all of the other kind of less reliable influences that people have, then not only can I do it at scale, like I mentioned earlier, where I can do 10,000 people in an hour, whereas you can do one, but I can also remove all of those other biases which are affecting all of us every day.
Okay, so then for the layman then, when you say 10,000 people an hour, that means that 10,000 people can go onto the system online, they can go through an automated interview process, and then out of those 10,000, it can narrow it down to the people that fit the bill the best before you then have any direct communication with them, yeah?
Yeah, exactly. So the way that we've got our system set up is an employer will kind of define a brief, the things that they're looking for, and we think that the CV is a pathetic way of screening people, although it is industry standard and has been for decades. but people are more complicated than a CV. So we ask an employer to brief us on 5 levels. What are the skills and what are the experience? Level 1 and level 2. What are the competencies that you're looking for in this person? What are the behavioral traits that you're looking for in this person? And what are the cultural values of the company? And we take that brief, we run all of these video interviews with candidates, and then we process the video interview and say to the candidate, to the client, sorry, you were looking for plant pot with green leaves. This person looks like a plant pot with green leaves. So they're probably a match for what you're looking for.
Okay, let's take it into sales now.
Yeah, man.
Okay, and let's understand really how sales is a high turnover industry, typically, so job retention isn't as it is in some other businesses. People have to perform in different ways because a lot of them are not necessarily salaried, and they have to, whatever they kill, they eat. They've got to find that opportunity. And a lot of companies employ salespeople, and you find a lot of employers say, well, I thought he had a great attitude. I thought he had a great work ethic at the interview. Now, for me, that's how do you measure work ethic anyway, But I thought all of those things. And as many times as they've got it wrong,
they've got it right.
But they haven't. As many times as they've got it wrong, they've probably got 10% right.
Yeah.
And so they remember the good decisions they made. So, well, I employed that guy, and I wasn't sure he was going to be any good.
That's a confirmation bias.
Okay.
Right? So in that scenario, that's a really subtle bias. And as humans, as individuals, as people, not as humans, as individuals, we all want to think that we're right. Right? It's an ego boost. I was right. I was right, Spence. I was right. And as a consequence of that, every time that we did something right, we hang on to that. But every time that we did something wrong or we made one of those wrong decisions, it remains in our short-term memory for a period of time, and then it gets discarded instead of being committed to the long-term memory.
So how do business owners go about the best way to recruit the right people for their business? What are the things they really need to look for? And I'll talk about, culture and behavior, because these are kind of buzzwords. And as buzzwords, they're not taken as seriously in some companies as they should be. However, the importance and the impact of having the people that are the right cultural fit. Yeah. What do people do to start making better decisions than they're making? What can your organization do to help them make better decisions?
So I would start without involving us. I think that there's a period of introspection that you have to go through. So you have to go through, you all right?
Yeah, we're okay.
Yeah. So there's like a period where you have to kind of look internally at a handful of things, because it's not just about hiring the right people, it's also about creating an environment that allows them to flourish and turn them into people who are greater than or a team that's greater than the sum of its parts. So you have to look at what are your not just what are your kind of cultural values, but also what is your ethos when it comes to managing a team of people. How do you want your managers to behave, and what are the kind of things that you want them to impart on other people, so as that you ensure, or members of their team, so as that you ensure that everyone is moving in the right direction. Because it's very common when you have lots of individuals who are all individually very good at their own thing, when you put them in the same room and task them with the same thing, everyone's got a different way of approaching the problem. And finding a way of communicating with each other where you can develop trust, accountability, commitment, and then finally results, as well as having some kind of mechanism for kind of like healthy conflict as well. If you can create an environment that facilitates those things, and you can find people who are naturally good fits for the behavior of your team or your company, then you're going to find a lot of cohesion and a lot of opportunity for that team to really grow and develop beyond what they were as individuals. So I would suggest you start there. Once you've got that bit, sorry, do you want to handle this? No,
you
fine,
have to come and take it. I can't.
It's fine. I'm only in the middle of changing everything in the world.
Okay, but it was frozen then. Sorry, carry on, Mark. Sorry, mate.
No problem, man. I'm teasing. I couldn't possibly change anything in the world. Yeah, so start there. Start with understanding what's the framework that you're creating, what's the environment that you're creating. Once you've worked that part out, convert that into a kind of series of actionable things that you can then go and look for.
Yeah, but let me play devil's advocate here,
Yeah.
because this is a great thing to talk about. Then they take that into the real world for a lot of these people. Is that I just need to find good quality people.
Yeah, I can help you do that faster than a normal person.
But I need to find good quality people, and what I want to do is I want to recruit 100 awesome salespeople, okay, and I want to interview 110 max so I can find 100.
Yeah.
All right.
That would be an amazing.
I know, yeah, absolutely. But that's some of the mindset that I experience.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And so, you know, and if they wanted to find 10 awesome salespeople, they'd even be prepared in most cases to interview 50 to find 10. But that's what they want, and they want that fixed quickly. They don't. You're talking about a lot of the things that I believe are the right thing to do. But a lot of companies are so entrenched in their ways that going and doing that self-reflection and assessment.
It's because the mindset's wrong. Fundamentally, and look, it's common in large companies as well. You know, like the big consulting firms that everyone kind of points to as being the design thinkers and the innovators. They got massive problems. You know, they all companies, not all of them, but a lot of them don't really understand why culture is more important than strategy, and they don't spend enough time reflecting before they then go and create action. So you talk about awesome salespeople. Define awesome salesperson to me.
Someone that can close one in every two of the leads that they get. Someone who's got a great attitude, a great work ethic.
What's a great attitude? You're very subjective, Spencer.
This is what
objective.
Okay, a really great attitude.
That's just more. It's not necessarily objective.
An extra good attitude. They're a team player, but they can work on their own. They're a leader, but they're a leader, but they've not got a big ego. You know what I mean? It's all of these things, and I know there's certain characteristics in top level successful sales guys. They can be. I think I look at them like Formula One racing drivers. They're part of a team, but they're the kind of prima donna in there, and they're looking for the glory as well as the success.
And look, that role is an important part of the team, right? I remember when I was back in the UK, working in the UK, my I think it was my CEO, it could have been someone just underneath him, said something along the lines of not everyone can be a Wayne Rooney. And for some reason that stuck with me. I'm really bad with names as well, so I couldn't actually remember who it was that said it. But he said not everyone can be a Wayne Rooney. And it really stuck with me because it made me understand that in a team, everyone has a different role to play, right? And not everyone needs to be the center of attention. Sometimes you need people who are domineering. Sometimes you need people who are introspective or introverted. Sometimes you need people who are really conscientious, so they're really achievement striving. Sometimes you need people who are just going to get on with the work. There's a different role for different personality types in every organization. But it starts with the organization really understanding what are the problems that they're trying to solve, what's the kind of culture that they want to create in order to achieve a specific strategy or execute a specific strategy to generate the objective or to succeed in the objective. So for us, when we go and we speak to clients about this, we're like, okay, where are you now? What are your objectives right now? And inevitably everyone starts off with saying, oh, we want more sales or we want to generate more revenue. And that's an outcome. That's not a path that's going to get you to generating more revenue, right? That's just here's what I'd like to see, here's what I'd like to have. I'd like to have $10 billion. But if I don't lay out a plan to get to $10 billion, it will always just be something that I would like to have. So inevitably, when we start going into companies and we start talking to them about what we can do and how we can help them, we start with what's your objective, and they will say we want more sales, we want more revenue. We get a little bit deeper, and they turn around and they say, okay, well here's idea about how we might achieve it. Then they start getting into the strategy of how they think they can achieve their objective, and that's where we then come in and say, okay, well in order to create or to deliver on this strategy, do you need people who are going to execute on tasks? Do you need a culture that's going to be one of completing jobs? Do you need a culture which is going to be one of starting jobs? Do you need a culture which is going to be one of innovation or challenging or looking for alternative solutions? Because when you start creating that culture, that then feeds into executing the strategy and allows you to achieve your strategy, which would hopefully then allow you to achieve your objective, assuming you have taken market feedback in order to shape your strategy. Otherwise, doesn't really matter what you do, you're not going to reach your target.
It's really interesting you say that. Please come in and ask questions if you've got them, because this is a fascinating subject, and I think one that a lot of us don't pay an awful lot of attention to. So if you've got questions, please let me know what they are. Where's the love hearts? Where's the stuff? I know this is a bit intense, okay? And I know it's not Sunday night like we usually are, and we're here on Monday night, but really this, for any of you that are in a management position, any of you that are in a leadership role, any of you that own or run a business, invariably you would have made bad recruiting decisions along the way. But even with the best will in the world, you get people that disappoint and let you down. And to try and find better ways of doing it, to me, is really important. Just take somebody who's in charge of HR in a company, and their role is to vet candidates or, to interview candidates at the beginning before they go up to the CEO or whatever. Who's trained that person to be a professional recruiter? Because invariably they've been trained to do lots of things, but that's not one of them.
Yeah. Well, it's the same thing with I'll come back to that, but it's the same thing with who decided that this guy should be a manager or this girl should be a manager, and what was the criteria for her becoming a manager. Manager has to be able to elicit the best out of their team. There are a lot of mechanisms and levers that they can pull in order to be able to do that. It's not necessarily just being good at the task, right? If the task is cutting the plant, is this real? If the task is trimming the plant, and I'm really good at trimming the plant, I can teach someone else to trim the plant. Doesn't necessarily mean that I should be their manager, right? Very different skill set, but inevitably we end up promoting people who are just good at the task because of whatever reason we want to retain them, and there's always a reason. But coming back to the HR thing, I would agree with you. There's some knowledge gap that exists, not everywhere, but often. But I think that there's a bigger problem. I think that the function of HR has been commoditized into how many CVs can you screen and how quickly can you screen them. So I'll give you an example. We're working with a client at the moment, and this is going to sound like a wacky number, and it's on purpose. They spend 5.1 million seconds every week screening CVs.
5.1 million seconds every week.
Yeah.
And how many seconds are there in a week?
So if you work that out...
How many seconds are there in a week?
If you work that out in working days...
Work it out! Someone work it out!
If you work out in working days, it's about 14 working days a week that they have to spend just screening CVs before they can even make a decision about whether or not to share that person with the line manager.
Wow.
It's nuts.
Yeah.
Because the volume of people applying to the role is outrageous. LinkedIn's made it so easy. They have also commoditized the application, right? The candidate application process is now as simple as click a button. Apply now, easy apply with LinkedIn. And the chances of you standing out if you use easy apply with LinkedIn are minimal. Because I know from where I'm sitting, we run an ad for one day, and we have over 1,000 people apply for that job. And all that they're doing is clicking on the apply button, the easy apply button. So we've kind of changed that process and pushed everyone to do a video interview, which does a lot more screening. And it's really interesting because you can see very quickly who's actually interested in doing it. Who's actually really genuinely interested in applying for the role. So we'll have 1,000 people click on the apply button, and then only 75 people will complete the video. Nice. Which says that not everyone who clicked the apply button was relevant, qualified, interested, or available, or in the budget. So there's definitely a qualification thing, but there's also the supply-demand thing. At the end of the day, if you don't have enough recruiters or talent acquisition people to be able to process those CVs and those profiles quickly enough, you can't get through all of them. So you just got to say, okay, I'm going to stop now. There's actually a computer programming problem called the secretary problem, which is a stopping algorithm problem, which basically tries to identify what is the optimum number of candidates to see before you say, okay, I've seen enough, right?
Is there?
Is gravity on your side?
Did I break it? It's all right, sorry. He keeps running up the edge of the chair.
Yeah. So there's a lot of thought that's been put into that. And if you really consider it, how are you supposed to stand out in a sea of 1,000 people a day?
I could sit and listen to you talk about this subject for hours and hours and hours. I'm genuinely fascinated by it. But let's take some questions from people. Hi guys, how you doing? Claude says, I'm currently recruiting for many sales roles, but finding it challenging as the product we sell is quite complex, and I don't just want to put bums on seats. Suggestions. So Claude's in the real estate industry, and he is a developer side or broker side, doesn't matter. Okay, can you give him some advice?
Dude, I sell artificial intelligence, so I know what it's like to have like a complicated product. With almost every client, they start off asking questions at the beginning of the Dunning-Kruger, right? The questions always start off with, how do you know it's accurate? And so we run a demo for them to test the accuracy, and they're like, oh my God, that's really good. But I don't understand how it's going to save me time or money, which is really what the value of the product, the proposition is to save you time or save you money. And then it doesn't matter how many times we try to qualify them at the beginning, saying don't worry about the accuracy, worry about the time that it's going to save you, because that's really where you're getting the benefit. They always want to test that out. So when it comes to selling really complicated products, the thing that I found most successful for us is to bring it back to the need that you're solving and the human-to-human relationship that you're trying to enhance. And I think that kind of human relationship that you're trying to enhance doesn't matter whether you're selling a house, an off-plan property, or artificial intelligence. At the end of the day, the value proposition is always, I'm going to make your life better. I'm going to make your life better. And you just got to find a way of communicating that in a way that is relevant to the product that you're selling and is relevant to the individual you're selling to.
Got it, understood. Hopefully that's answered that question. Claus works on the developer side. We've got other questions in here. Let's go to the questions that we have over here. Danny says 59 days, 8.5 weeks. That's that many seconds.
Is that nice?
Crazy, crazy, crazy. Okay, so we've got Mohammed Omar from Dubai. How you doing, Mohammed? I hope you're well. So on Facebook, whether you're on Instagram, wherever you are. I run a fairly successful company here in the UAE, but I've noticed a massive shift in the working world over the past 10 years. People used to be loyal to their firms and would work their way up the ladder in one particular organisation. So my dad, really. These days, however, people don't seem to stay in the same job for more than 2 years. Why is this, and what can we as a company do to retain our staff?
It's a very, very hard question. So when I look at it, I look at the impact that technology has had on the workforce, and also a shift in mindset, an intergenerational shift in mindset. So if you look at me versus my dad, right? My dad worked for the same company for like 20 years before he then was made redundant, and then went to another company in the same industry that was very closely affiliated with the company that he was before, and he stayed there for a long time. And more recently, he's kind of got into this freelancing thing where he does his own thing, works on the projects that he wants to work on. But that's a very recent thing. Me, on the other hand, I think the longest that I spent in a job is 3 years, 2 years before moving on. That kind of, and I loved a lot of the places that I worked. I really, really enjoyed it. I enjoyed working with my manager. I enjoyed working for the company. I enjoyed the work I was doing. The motivations for leaving had nothing to do with the environment that I was in. And sometimes you've got to accept that things are just outside of your control. But equally, technology has played a massive part in democratizing the workforce. So you end up in a situation with things like the gig economy, the most famous example of which is obviously Uber. But then you've got things like the Mechanical Turk, which is an Amazon product for microtasking, products like Figure 8, which is another microtasking service, and then tools like Upwork, which allow you to identify freelancers and then task them with jobs to do.
Yeah.
And there's a whole really interesting conversation about, well, how do you retain talent in the gig economy to do really deep work? So deep work would be the idea of something very, very complicated, and then trying to assemble a team which are effectively freelancers and hired guns that will just go to the highest bidder. How do you retain those people remotely when you don't have that shared environment for people to gather around or gather in? And that's a whole different conversation, which is incredibly challenging.
Don't go
as
there.
well. Yeah.
Stay on point with this one, because we're digging in deep. He wants to keep his staff, man. He doesn't want them to leave.
So look.
He can tie them up.
Yeah, no, you can't.
That's not going to work, is it? Okay.
No,
fine.
look, I think on that side, what you really want to focus on the retention. So attrition is a thing. You're never going to have zero attrition or 100% attrition. So then the thing becomes, how do I find the right people for the environment to improve the environment and to improve the culture of the business so as that people want to spend time here? How do I then incentivize them. So that's kind of part one. Then part two is how do I incentivize the people to stay here? Whether that is, I know you guys have done some really cool stuff with Blue Sky Thinking, where you kind of incentivize everyone to stay by giving them stock options, which I don't know if it was stock options or shares. I don't know exactly how you structured it. But that's another really attractive incentive for people, because you do two things with that. Firstly, you inspire them to feel like, to care about the long-term success of the company. And secondly, you invite them not just to feel like they're part of the tribe, but actually be part of the tribe. Mm-hmm. You give them a piece of the bread and everyone holds their piece of bread. I think that's very, very forward thinking. I commend you for that. Yeah. So you could do that with on the incentive side, and then there's the quick wins or the cheap wins, which are actually more expensive, which are things like increasing salary and benefits.
That typically doesn't work, though, for most people. But some people, it's not always about money either, though. It's about some significance. It's about having a ladder to walk up that they know, a path to grow. Yeah. So, one person I know, we put them on a HR course. And that 1 week's HR course after 3 years was like the most important thing to them. That they respected and that so much that we got way more years out of that person, because you invested in me. Yeah. You invested in my learning. You sent me away to go and learn something I really wanted to learn. Yeah. And for that person, really extremely significant to them.
Yeah. Well, it shows you value them as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's go on to the next question. Jerry Peters from Vegas. Hi, Jerry. How are you? Where you are? Facebook world, whether you're out on Instagram world. Okay. My wife runs her own business, and in the space of 5 months has recruited 2 women who almost destroyed her company. Both these ladies seemed wonderful when my wife employed them and came with brilliant references. But the second my wife hired them full-time, they seemed to morph into completely different people. My question is this: how can you trust that the people you hire, will be the people they say they are? Is it ethical to run background searches on your potential staff to make sure they are not shady?
Look, we're in a surveillance. I read a book recently called Surveillance Capitalism. And there's been some documentaries recently on Netflix as well about the Cambridge Analytica scandal. We live in an environment, in a world now where we actively volunteer to give personal information to huge companies. So I kind of think that if you're asking a question of is it ethical to run those background checks, people are making it publicly available. So it's up to the people, right? If they're making it publicly available, presumably it's because they want people to know, right? Yeah. So I kind of feel that that's fair. From my perspective and from the product that we've built, one of the things that we measure is integrity. So we can't tell if someone's lying, but we can tell if you have a general disposition towards bending the truth, right? It's kind of like weather and climate change. So a lie would be the weather. Now I can't predict what the weather's going to be like in 2041 on December the 19th. But I can tell you, because of climate change, it's going to be very hot, right? Okay. Integrity and lying is kind of the same thing. I can predict the integrity, which is the climate change. I can't predict the lie, which is the weather.
Understood. So then this kind of story is not uncommon.
We have the same thing.
Okay, you employ people in there, they're great people at the outset, and you're like, these are the right people for us. Yeah. Within 5 minutes in the business, they turn into monsters. What could Jerry have done to help his wife not employ the wrong people? What could he have done? What could he have done differently? What might he have missed?
There's some preemptive signals. I mean, I'm a big fan of psychometrics. I think that really kind of understanding the detail of a person is very important and very valuable if you understand how to use it and how to interpret it. So there are some preventative measures that could have been taken, but fundamentally there should have been quick action when you identified the problem. And we have a habit as well, when we employ people, as an employer, you feel responsible towards those people. The last thing that you want to do is have to tell someone, listen, you got to go. You're not going to have any income. I don't know your personal situation. It might mean that you're not able to eat for a month. No one wants to have that kind of burden on them. But at the same time, especially in a small business, like that's a challenge, right? To deal with that on the emotional front. But at the same time, when you spot those signals, you need to deal with them quickly. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, it's poisonous.
Yeah, absolutely. Danny says, do you think succession plan makes a huge difference in businesses?
Yep.
There you go. Answered that question nice and easily. Well, Danielle's my business partner. For those who don't know, Danielle's on here. Danielle's my business partner, and I think that Danielle came up with the succession planning strategy for our business as well. So we clearly think that's the case. Greg from Joburg says, "Hi Spencer, I'm qualified. I've got great experience. I'm a hard worker. I'm prepared to do just about anything to get the job done. My problem: none of this comes across in my interviews with potential employers. I tend to get nervous and bomb out when it comes to the hiring process. Do you have any tips on how I can land the job of my dreams?"
How do you know you're looking in the right place? How do you know if you're bombing in those interviews? Are there specific things that are making you feel uncomfortable? If it's that kind of human-to-human thing, like that one-on-one interaction, which is understandably intimidating as well, especially sitting here with an icon like you.
Oh, shut
Then look, I mean, oh, you blushing, mate? So if there are going to be certain triggers that are making you feel uncomfortable. So Greg, if you can identify what those triggers are and then try and find ways of either working around them or converting them into an advantage for you, there are going to be certain roles where if you are uncomfortable with that one-on-one relationship, where you can kind of be a part of a group of people who are all trying to do the same thing and slightly more introverted in terms of the style of work. So I would suggest look at what the triggers are that are causing you to bomb, and then refocus your efforts on roles which are more specifically aligned with your kind of behaviours and personality type.
Okay, good one. Ibrahim Khalil from the UAE. So wherever you are, Ibrahim, nice to see you. Thanks for coming to join us. I spend tons of money on recruitment. This is my last one, actually. I spend tons of money on recruitment, but the candidates that are coming through aren't meeting my expectations. Are recruiters worth their fees, or should I rather hire an internal person to screen applicants on our behalf? I'm sure I'd save a ton of money.
I mean, short of starting...
I think he just answered the question. Did he answer the question himself in the question?
Yeah, I mean, short of starting a war with the recruitment agencies, which is absolutely not my intention, I think that there's some important transitions that need to happen in the kind of recruitment service industry, where we can help the industry provide more value instead of providing a Rolodex. But as well, at the same time, Ibrahim, I think that there's probably, I don't know which one to look at.
Well, no, is that one, either one?
Ibrahim. I think that there's probably some introspection that you may want to do in terms of the brief that you're providing to these people, to these recruiters as well, because if in programming we use a phrase called garbage in, garbage out. If you give a poor brief where you just say, like Spencer did earlier, I want an awesome sales guy who's really, really awesome, do me a favor, man. What are we expecting to get from that? So there's certainly some briefing things that you might want to look at. And as a general commentary on the industry, I think that recruiters need to be looking at the value more in depth of the kind of value that they can add, instead of just providing access to a marketing service.
Yeah, I agree. Nadia, how you doing, hon? She says, I've got a full-time job. What can I do differently to stand out and let management identify me as the able to go-to person when they need anything? And how can I make this result a promotion? I've been promised promotions, but some businesses take place where staff are let go, and eventually I'm just in the same spot. So what she's basically saying here is, what do I do differently to stand out? Again, I think let me answer this one, Nadia. If you want to be promoted in a business, it's important that you go to your boss and make it really clear that that's what you want. And you also ask them exactly what you need to do to get that promotion, and get it clear in writing. Look, you need to take these 5 steps and it's going to take you 24 months or whatever it is to get that. But if you do all of those things, then we will give you the promotion. Now, they might say, if you do all of those things and the position is available, we'll give you the promotion. But you have to know. There's no point you saying to yourself, I'm going to do all these things to improve myself, if that's not what the employer that you work for, and I know you work for a big bank, recognizes. So for me, it'd be very, very clear. What have I got to do to get this promotion? I want that job, okay? And tell me honestly, am I ever going to be ready for it?
Yeah.
Because you might be able to make a different decision about the company you work for. So for me, that's kind of important. All right, we've...
Just to add on to that
well,
statistically and according to the research, it's easier to get a pay rise and a promotion by moving company.
Yes, okay, I know this too, this one, I've heard this before. So
I don't want to.
She's been there a long time, I think, though.
Leave,
it's easier to get a pay rise and a promotion if you leave. Okay, it's sometimes easier to get a pay rise and a promotion. Hold on a minute, if you threaten to leave as well.
Oh, yeah, actually the research also shows that particularly for women, it's easier to get a promotion and a pay rise if you move company.
And you've got statistics on that, so for all you ladies out there, interesting data. All right, guys, look, we could sit and talk probably for 3 or 4 hours on this subject, and I'm conscious of the fact that it's the evening for you. If you'd like to learn more about Harvey and his business, then how do they get hold of you, mate?
We're super active on LinkedIn. You can follow us at Searchie. What is it? Searchie AI? Yeah.
Searchie is SEARCHIE.ai.
Yeah.
Okay. Lizzie or Alicia will put it in the bit at the bottom here after the video. And if they, how much does it cost to work with a company like you?
What as an employer?
As an employer. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, when you laugh, then you're like, it's the money shot.
No, look, okay, so we get a lot of media coverage for the innovation. I say innovation with air quotes. It is innovation, and the work that we do in artificial intelligence. But for me, the most important thing that we're innovating is the pricing model in recruitment. Our interviews, so we don't charge a percentage of the annual salary. We charge on the number of interviews that you consume, and we charge just $10 per interview. The typical role is filled with just 20 interviews. So filling a role with us is about $200.
Wow.
Yeah.
Which
instead
is
of,
massively
instead
cheaper.
of $5,000, $5,000,
Yeah.
$6,000.
Well, in average in recruitment, in sales, people are typically paying 10,000 dirhams to the recruiter. They're paying obviously for visas and everything else and medical insurance, all that kind of stuff at the beginning. And if they take on 2 people, they're probably 40, 50,000 dirhams in.
Yeah.
If they lose one of them very quickly, they're still 50,000 dirhams in.
And that's in the sales roles.
Just in sales roles, yeah.
You look at like some of the other roles, like marketing roles and more senior roles as well. It's 15 to 25% of the annual salary of the person,
which is outrageous.
It's crazy. It's absolutely
crazy. It literally is outrageous money. It doesn't make any sense at all.
It's crazy. So yeah, $10 for an interview. Normally you need a pack of 20 interviews. $200 fill a role, and that's CEOs down to
everybody else as well.
Retail sales guys.
So if anybody wants to get in touch with Harvey, they're the details, okay? And if you want to go and you can DM me if you want more details. I'll gladly pass on any information on. Harvey's business has really kind of excited me and inspired me to learn more about how AI works in recruitment and how it can have a big difference in industry. And I think working in the role that I have, working with companies that employ so many people and have high staff turnover and low performance in the main, I think this kind of technology and approach is absolutely essential. So if you work in a company and you work with, and there's a large sales force or there's lots of employees, go to your HR manager, go to your director, okay, and talk to them about this because I think it can be really valuable for the businesses. Cheers for coming on, mate. I appreciate it. Okay, and we'll speak to each other soon. Cool. Take care, folks. Whatever you do, make sure that you make it happen.